Over the years, I've seen some bad Monocouche render jobs, but these pictures take it to the next level. I got these pictures sent to me on an email from the Skill Builder channel. Roger Bisby sent me these and asked me how I'd fix them. We jumped on a call and this is what was said.
Hello, I'm Roger Bisby from the Skill Builder channel, and we get a few plastering problems coming in, we get a few damp problems coming in, and this one in particular looks to me a little bit tricky because it's a K-rend problem, and I know that K-rend, all those Monocouche coatings, are notoriously difficult to do any kind of repairs on. So I thought, why not ask Kirk and see what he says about this job. So Kirk, how are you doing?
I'm all right, Roger.
I sent you over the photographs, so you've had a look at these. And I must start, first of all, we don't want to hear people just saying, well, he's a fool, this bloke, he got the wrong people in. We know he's come unstuck. He knows he's come unstuck. He knows the job is not great. And what he wants to know now is how to fix it.
It's an absolute minefield, in my opinion, trying to repair K-rend. Well, everyone calls it K-rend, but ultimately Monocouche render, it could be, one of many different brands. We don't have to pick on K-rend specifically. It could be Weber, could be Parex, could be, Piob. There's loads of different brands, but it is very difficult to get a perfect job, and seeing the pictures, I feel the guy's pain. I know what the plasterer's gone through. I know he's struggled with it, it's not been fun for him one bit.
You put them on and then you rub them back and you just get the scratcher on it. It would seem to be, a bit like Artex, it would seem to be the easiest thing in the world to patch, because you think, surely all you've got to do is put a patch on there, scratch it up, and it'll look the same. So what is the difficulty with actually doing work on it when you've got to put a patch in or there's a crack or something you've got to do?
When you put the render on and you scrape it back, the scraped part and the unscraped part will dry two completely different colours and different textures. Okay, so when you're trying to blend into something, when you scrape it back, the bit that you've blended in won't necessarily get scraped back, and it'll leave a ring around it. That can be avoided if you build out past the area that you're patching. But then you have the other problem that you start filling up the texture on the old part of the wall that you're trying to patch into. So it seems so simple, but it's really difficult to get it nice, to get it unnoticeable. And the other problem is the bit that you're blending into, if you manage to touch that again and scrape it again, that changes the colour as well. When you re-scrape something that's already been scraped, it sends it a lighter colour again. So it really is extremely difficult, to patch up. When you miss a little section when you're scraping, it shows up lighter. The colour shows through lighter. So grey is one of the darkest colours that you can use. Therefore, any misses show up really well. So grey is almost the worst colour you could possibly use for having problems. If you were to use white, that would be the absolute easiest colour to use. So if anybody's going to be a beginner, someone trying it for the first time maybe, white is going to be a lot more forgiving than grey.
Oh, well, that's really worth knowing. I didn't know that at all, but that's probably why there's so much white about then.
All mine are white. I don't do
it. That's like the old Ford thing, isn't it? You can have any colour you like so long as it's white. So looking at this job here, we can see areas where he's obviously got a bit of bellying in the wall where, you put a straight edge along it and you can see, and also bits where it's bowing out and bits where it's thicker at the bottom where it's come out. Would you reckon that you could scrape any of that back, say, to get rid of any high spots, or is that impossible to do at that point?
You can scrape the render again, but ultimately, once it's in that condition it's in now, I would say you're basically flogging a dead horse, trying to get a nice job of that now. With the dishes and stuff in it, it's quite important that when you scrape it, you use an eye bar, but
I know,
rather than just one of the little floats.
What stage do you use that eye bar at? Because I've got one and I've used it, and some people laughed at me, said, "Oh, he's using that at the wrong stage."
The eye bar, you want to be using that once you're scraping back, which is usually once you've applied the top coat. You want to give it about minimum sort of 5 or 6 hours to cure. You can use accelerator. But after about 5 or 6 hours, you can start scraping. And that's where you want to use the eye bar. Now, some guys like to then finish it off with the little nail float to get an even texture across it. I personally don't. I just use the eye-bar and that's it, finished.
You do the whole lot with the eye-bar. That's interesting. So you're not doing any of that rubbing. So that's pretty quick, your process then, yeah?
It all starts on the base coat. So if the wall's out of shape, if the brickwork's everywhere, a quick scratch coat with the mesh embedded might not be enough. It might be better to do another scratch coat, and rule it off. You want to try and it's got to be flat before you put the top coat on. It's no good trying to get it flat with the top coat.
These bits here you can see behind the pipes. I mean, if you can remove the rainwater pipes, that's great, but saw pipes are a little bit more difficult. What do you do about getting behind there? And more importantly, not only getting behind there, but rubbing up behind there, because you won't get your eye bar in there, will you?
I always try and remove absolutely everything you possibly can, It's worth paying a plumber to come and take as much stuff off, get him in for a day, take everything off. It's worth paying somebody to do that. And having no obstacles, it genuinely is, because you start having problems or you're trying to get behind pipes and you're struggling and you go through to the base coat, it's going to cost thousands of pounds then, because it's, the wall's completely ruined. Sort of in this situation now, it's got to be redone again. So it is worth sort of trying to get as much obstacles out the way.
Yeah.
Understandably, you might not be able to remove everything. There might be a soil stack, a cast iron soil stack maybe that you can't take off. In that situation, I would try and get either side of it perfect with the eye bar, and then all you've got to do is get something like a saw blade.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Slide that behind and just gently scrape it flat to the two existing bits that you've already got right.
Brilliant.
There is ways of getting behind it, but it's one of those. It's not ideal,
The other place I've saw a few problems there was where the scaffold tubes have gone. It looked like to me that they had to work around those scaffold tubes. What we used to call the putlocks. So not that you use them anymore, but you know what I'm saying. They need moving out from the wall, don't they? If you're having something done like that, rendering, it's probably worth saying to the scaffolders that you need to be able to turn the board back and slide them out the way. It's a constant problem, isn't it, working around scaffolding?
I've never yet had a scaffolding set up, but I haven't had to adjust before we get started. I'm not recommending people go and do this. I'm quite willing to accept the blame for this, but I know you shouldn't be messing around with the scaffolding, but it's just, I've never turned up to one where everything is easily accessible. There's not a handrail in the way. There's not a scaffolding board too close. The joint between the two levels where you're going to reach down, it's important that you can get the bar in there and get that perfectly flat, that's going to be, if there's going to be a bump, that's where it's going to be.
Yeah, you see that day joint all the way around where somebody's stopped with the scaffolding. You see a lot, don't you? Even in brickwork, you see that. Okay, these are some of the problems, but what's he going to do with it now?
The process he's probably gone through has been right. He's probably base coated it. We can't see that he definitely has, but I'm sure he has. He's probably installed render mesh. So there's no point taking it all off. I wouldn't say. This is what I would do if it.
Yeah.
That was what I turned up to. I would just go over it again. I would put. I would rebead it with 10mm beads. Now, a lot of companies will say, no, you should use 15mm beads, but he's already got the wall quite close. It's a lot better than what it probably was when it was just brickwork. So I would look at rebeading it and spend a lot of time getting the beads perfect. They are, it's all in the preparation. So getting the beadwork spot on, making sure the miters on all the beads perfect. I'll then probably go over with another tight coat of base coat, but I'd use the derby on it and try and get it as flat as possible, fill out all the hollows and get that base coat perfect.
As if you were doing a sand and cement job, then the same idea that you would just absolutely flatten the whole thing out. Would you grind anything off down where it goes thickens at the bottom or not, or you wouldn't bother?
I'd be more inclined to reset new beads on top that are a lot neater and then build out base coat.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Come out rather than taking it back in.
Yeah.
Now, there's going to be some guys that say, it's going to end up too thick. And that's a fair argument. It's something that's sort of on the back of my mind as well. But if it's been meshed, that stuff really does stick quite well. So,
so
I wouldn't see it as being
no need to SBR it or anything? None of your pink SBR in there or what?
Hey, I'd love to sell more of it.
Do you know what? Everyone loves that. They keep saying to me, "Oh, you need to get Kirk's." My mate buys it, and he said, "Oh, you need to get Kirk's pink stuff down." You know, so
No, it's not necessary. The HP12, if he's going to use A-Rend or well, any of the big brands, their base coats, you know, it really is.
much.
It's far superior to sand and cement, so it doesn't need any sort of primer or sealer. It'll stick to that top coat like no one's business.
And I guess the thing is to get that done fairly soon before the mould gets on it and everything else, and you start getting problems with algae. At this stage, it's recently been done. That would be the time to go over it. Yeah. So we're looking at a new job, really, aren't we? From scratch.
Yeah.
You know, okay, you're not hacking off, but you're walking up to it and you're beading it, you're base coating it, you're meshing it, maybe. Maybe not. Did you say mesh it or not mesh it?
Well, I mean, if he's installed the mesh, it might not be necessary to. It might not be necessary to completely cover the whole thing in base coat again. You know, the idea monocouche render. The term monocouche means one coat. None of them originally had base coats. They only started including that, so you had somewhere to embed the mesh. If there's already mesh embedded in it and the customer's confident that it's in there, you know, it might be a step that you could eliminate and just fill out the low bits with base coat and not have to do the whole wall again. If it saves on cost a little bit. One thing that I would really look at doing though is once the wall's been scraped, it can leave like a dustle on the wall. So depending on how long ago it was done, it might be an idea to go all over it first with a stiff brush and make sure that there's no sort of scrapings from the original scrape still left on the wall that could be, you know, cause a delamination. You know, with
Would that be a pressure washer job or not, or is that too much?
You could do. But no, you could do. You can pressure wash it. I mean, wouldn't pressure wash a finished job that's, you know, done and dusted, because you can blow corners out the beads and stuff. But if it's going to if you're going over it again, it doesn't really matter. What you'll find sometimes, Roger, is when the guys are scraping back, if they hit a corner of a bead, maybe near a reveal, they might lose a little bit of render. And then whilst it's still soft, you can push the render back in again. But it's not going to be, you know, it's not going to be like concrete. So if you've got a pressure washer on it, you could start taking those little bits back out again, you know. There's a lot of things that can go wrong with monocouche render. 90% of the time on every single render, there's going to be a little issue, a little air pocket or something somewhere that's had to be fixed in the scraping process. And that bit that's been fixed, I mean, this isn't ideal. It's just the truth. It's just how it is in the real world, you know. And that little bit that's been fixed isn't going to be as solid as the rest of the wall. So I wouldn't recommend pressure washing a finished job, just in case your pressure washer finds that little bit, you know, you're going to blow a hole in the render.
What about silicone renders? You ever done much with silicone renders or not?
Yeah, the thin coat.
The thin, 1.5 mil. Is there any scope for him doing anything like that on this now or not?
We're going to say we've got a fairly stable base coat that's been meshed, okay? So whether you go with a scrape render or a thin coat render, if he went down the thin coat route, he's still got to base coat the whole wall and rub it up smooth to give a nice smooth flat background for his thin coat top coat. But he's also got to prime it as well and then top coat it and rub it up. There's actually, it's lighter work, but there's more steps in the process. So the thin coat, I mean, unless you spray it, if you've got a spray machine, that's another option. But ultimately, the thin coat system is a lighter work. It's easier on the arm, but there's more steps in the process.
Yeah,
it takes longer, you know.
Yeah, I've done a bit of it. It's a job that's quite hard to do on your own in warm weather, isn't it? It just you know, you're constantly chasing that day joint, but it's not. The last question is, and I'm not saying you should take this job on or would take this job on. I don't even know where it is actually in the country. But is this instinctively something you run a mile from when you get somebody phone you up with this? I've had a job that's gone badly wrong. I need someone to fix it. Is that your kind of thing, or do you just say no?
It's funny, really, because I think you find this with all tradesmen. A lot of tradesmen are very, very dubious about going over somebody else's work where somebody else had a problem because they think, you know what, could be a can of worms. But I mean, ultimately, from what I can see, the job looks solid. The problem is just basically the finish. You know, there's no big structural cracks. There's nothing falling out. You know, doesn't seem to be blown bits. It just seems to be the actual finish. Any fella that tells you he's never had a blemish on his scraped render, you know, is just a liar, because it happens to everybody. It's how you learn. It's just bad when it's been so much on one job. You know, without I feel for the fella. You know, I know that the guy that's been doing that's been in tears, trying to fight with the stuff, you know, and I feel his pain. But I would have no problem sort of taking that job on and going over it. For me, I don't know where it is in the country. I'm busy, but if it was on my doorstep and I had the time and someone was, you know, in need, I'd happily get on with it, you know.
We're lucky we got you today, because you were going under the knife today, weren't you? You were going to have an operation on your knee. So that's been postponed, yeah?
Temporarily put back, yeah, because I went to Tenerife, had a lovely holiday with the missus, and then got an infection and ended up with pneumonia and was hospitalised. I've been in hospital for 5 days.
I didn't realise you got it on holiday. So did you actually complete the holiday before you got it, or did you get it halfway through the holiday?
The last 2 days of the holiday, I basically lost my appetite and had a horrendous cough, but I felt fine in myself. It was only when we sort of got back to the UK and I breathed in that lovely, fresh, crisp air that it really started to take a bite, you know.
I put it down to aeroplanes. Very often I've come back from a great holiday and arrived back in the UK feeling terrible, and I'm thinking, I've just spent 10 hours in an aircraft with a load of other people breathing in all that recycled air. It's dodgy business, isn't it? Oh, what a horrible thing as well, isn't it? Blooming pneumonia is not nice, is it?
Spending 5 days in the hospital, you hear so many people complaining about the NHS. All I can say is the hospital's was busting at the seams. I was waiting in an ambulance for a couple of hours outside. They kept me on the corridors for 2 days on a stretcher, and I would say I had 5-star treatments of all the staff. Couldn't have been treated any better. They were snowed under, but they did an amazing job, and they did it with a smile on the face. You know, they were fantastic. So
you've got to appreciate the fact they are working round the clock. They're working hard. Yeah, I'm glad you're on the mend anyway. And then you're going to wait till you're okay, and then you're going to have your knee done.
That's the plan, and I'll be back in action then. There'll be no stopping me.
Just the one knee, is it?
Yeah, just the one knee. Yeah. It's, I tried to take on Brazilian jiu-jitsu 2 years ago, and it ended up with an ACL tear and a meniscus tear. Anyway.
All right. Good luck to you, Kirk, and thanks very much for coming on and talking to us. Always good to see you, and hopefully we will get together for some fun. We're going to have a bit of a walkabout, you and me, aren't we? When we're fit. When I say walkabout, I'll be pushing you around in your wheelchair. Yeah. Good luck, mate.
A young fella in the wheelchair getting wheeled round.
By the old codger. So, wait, hang on a minute. Good on you, mate. Nice to see you.
Always a pleasure, Roger. Nice to talk to you.
Thank you.